How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. Well, it's Wednesday here on the show. That means tonight on TNT, AEW Dynamite, on the USA Network, NXT. Lots of stuff happening on both shows. We got a full lineup for those here on the program today. What are you looking forward here to tonight? Who do you think is going to win? Going to be the same story as every week, or is everything going to turn around here tonight? We can talk about that in the program today. We've also got some fallout from the Royal Rumble, including the ratings for Raw on Monday, which I got to talk about because it's very interesting. There was no post-Royal Rumble bump, which everybody was talking about, and quite frankly, my feeling is this bump doesn't exist anymore. So we'll talk about that today here on the show. We've also got the update on SMO Joe. Did in fact suffer a concussion, and a concussion is one of those things where he could be back this weekend. He could be back by WrestleMania. No way of knowing. They just test and they test and they test, and when he can pass, he'll be back. And sometimes it's quick, sometimes it takes a while. We'll give you the SMO Joe update here today. Both Bella twins expecting babies this year. So yes, the long-term storyline of Nikki Bella wanting a child, well, she's pregnant. It's not with John Cena, but she's pregnant. Also got updates on the WrestleMania weekend WrestleCon Super Show. A lot of big matches coming up for that show, and so much more. If you want to give us a call here today, as always, 1-800-878-PLAY, 1-800-878-7529. You can send text messages to 425-780-7566. My email, you can in fact email me, Bryan@WrestlingObserver.com, and you can follow me on Twitter for all of the most exciting ratings, news, and more. @Bryan Alvarez is my Twitter handle. Back in a moment with Mike Sempervive and more. Stick around, Wrestling Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. We'll get into the AEW and NXT lineups a little bit later, but first off, in a surprising turn of events, it says here, the Royal Rumble did not cause any kind of significant bump to the Raw ratings, as last night's show did 2.40 million viewers, even with it being built around Drew McIntyre and Charlotte Flair making their choices of WrestleMania opponents and the return interview of Edge. Down 12% from last year's post-Rumble show that did 2.71 million viewers. To show the ratings decline for the episode after the Royal Rumble, Raw did 4.10 million viewers in 2016, 3.62 million in 2017, and 3.4 million in 2018. So yes, from 2016 to today, in 4 years, the viewership of Raw after the Royal Rumble has almost been cut in half. First to third hour drop, 12% lower than most weeks. Now, the hours, 2.54 million viewers for the first hour, 2.44 second hour, 2.22 third hour. I mean, quite frankly, like the first to third hour drop, that's not bad. They maintain the audience a lot better than they have in the past. Nothing was below 2 million viewers. And they were 1, 2, and 3 in the demos on cable. So that's at least good. Now, as surprised as everybody is that there was not a post-Royal Rumble bump, I mean, I don't think there is going to be a bump for any of these shows anymore. And if you go back to the Royal Rumble, the Raw bump after the Royal Rumble was maybe 5%. It was very, very small. There was a period where WWE would be running these B shows, your Money in the Bank, your Backlash, whatever, and Raw would actually be down after the Royal Rumble as compared to up. So what I'm getting at here is we have lost so many casual viewers that the days of, well, you know, I like to watch Raw, but I'm not into it enough to watch the pay-per-views, so I'll tune into Raw to find out what happened. I think that there are fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer of those people. And now, I think that most of the people that watch Raw, they're watching the Royal Rumble. They got the WWE Network, or they have a friend who has a WWE Network, or they follow everything on social media. And so I believe that maybe with the exception of WrestleMania, but WrestleMania wasn't huge either. I think the days of the post-pay-per-view bump have ended, and that's not a good thing.
No, and that's a good call. It's a safe call, unfortunately. We talk about it all the time with the hardcore fans. What are we down to? And it seems like we're down to about the same 2.5 million or people or so WWE Network numbers. We may not know what they ever are again with how they are now structuring them. But they started slipping down to a point where it seemed like they were at their absolute nubs when it came to what their fan base was, and they need to cultivate new fans. I mean, this is nothing new. This is not really a surprise. It's been going in that direction, and everybody all day can talk about, well, those 3 million people or 2.5 million people, whatever it is, are now finding it in different ways. If you can convince yourself of that, if that's what makes you feel better, that's fine. But that's not the case. The case is there just aren't people that are interested in the WWE product, and over time that has slipped. And maybe the people that have remained are bigger fans than they ever have been. And in fact, I think in some ways they really are. They are the most passionate fans. They are spending the most amount of money. They are the oldest. They have some advantages to what they are. But unfortunately, that's not going to help WWE long term, and it doesn't help their ratings, and it's slipping and slipping and slipping even more, and it's disappointing. You know, after the big events, you know, Royal Rumble, Survivor Series is one of them that should be, SummerSlam certainly, and obviously WrestleMania, there should always be at least a little bit of a bump. There should always be some casuals, some average sports fans. Somebody should have been sucked in and maybe want to see what happens next and try to latch those people on for another couple of weeks, if not a lifetime, but unfortunately they just haven't been doing that.
Schwarzenegger says, I think the Hour 3 ratings might have been heavily skewed this week. You have to remember 2.224 is the average for Hour 3, which had total filler garbage like Mojo Rawley, No Way Jose, Liv Morgan versus Lana, and the Eric Rowan squash matches. I'm certain they say Edge's segment did well otherwise. Can you ask Dave for the quarters? We'll have the quarters probably tonight, at the very latest by the time we get the new Observer out. But some of that was filler, but dude, Liv Morgan, Lana, I mean, that should have done okay. They've been building that thing up since, was it January 1st that they did the wedding? 29 days now or whatever? I mean, that one's been built up for a long time, so that should have done something. Now, as far as like No Way Jose and Mojo Rawley and the Eric Rowan squash, I mean, yeah, but the other thing you have to think about is they have stuff like that in the third hour every week. So I do think that the Edge segment was probably up. I mean, they built up throughout the entire show that he was going to come back. But we'll find out those numbers here in the next couple of days. So, tonight, AEW NXT, the AEW show on TNT. We've got the road to AEW Revolution. They got about a month for that pay-per-view to build it up. We got Chris Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz versus Private Party and Darby Allin. We've got the Young Bucks versus The Butcher and The Blade. And Jon Moxley will comment on his AEW Revolution title shot. So that's the lineup for tonight. No big, giant, marquee matches. Cody will face Kip Sabian as well. So that's tonight. It is live. It is not on a boat this week. For USA Network, we have got Adam Cole. The challenger for NXT TakeOver Portland will be revealed. And I don't know who it is. I mean, I watched the Worlds Collide show, and when the show was over, all I could think was it's got to be Walter, but I don't know that. So that'll be revealed tonight. We have the finals of the Dusty Classic, Pete Dunne and Matt Riddle versus James Drake and Zach Gibson. This match should be unbelievable. Maybe not unbelievable. It should be great. And Tegan Knox will face Dakota Kai. And that one has been built up since War Games. But let me tell you something as a fan. They dropped the ball on that one. As a fan, I don't care. And I should have cared. But Tegan got injured, and then Dakota was just out there losing matches, and then Tegan just randomly returned in a battle royal, and then they didn't even touch each other in the Women's Royal Rumble on Sunday. Like, I thought this was going to be a big match, but now it's just something to do on TV. Maybe they'll do some sort of angle to lead to TakeOver Portland, but, I mean, quite frankly, I'm done with this one. So, we'll see what they do tonight.
Tag match ought to be good. Here's the one thing about watching NXT tonight. At least you get to watch NXT. You won't be watching an NXT Japan because any thoughts of WWE buying Noah out the door. I don't know if you saw that news.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a while.
Yeah, that's an interesting move and very entertaining for some of us. But, the tag match, I think, is the thing that stands out. And I'm surprised at the Royal Rumble on Sunday that they had Dakota Kai go out so early, had Nixon come in so late, or what's her name, Tegan, come in so late, and they never had anything thought about to have them cross paths there. And yeah, it just seems to be that it's probably the quicker this thing goes and ends, and the faster you can move them both onto something else, the better off everybody's going to be there.
So the brackets for this tournament here, the 2020 tournament, we had the Grizzled Young Vets versus Undisputed Era, and we had Imperium versus the Broserweights. And Broserweights won, and I figured it was going to be the Broserweights versus the Undisputed Era in the finals. But in an upset, the Grizzled Young Vets beat the Undisputed Era, and I was baffled. Absolutely baffled. Like, all I could figure at the time was, well, they must just want to give one of the UK teams, like, a win. But, in hindsight, it appears to me that what's going to happen is the Broserweights are going to win, and then the Broserweights get that match against Undisputed Era for the titles at NXT TakeOver Portland. So actually, at the end of the day, even though I didn't understand at the time, I think it's going to all make sense after tonight. And Broserweights versus Undisputed Era for the titles in TakeOver Portland, that match should be out of this world.
Well, you travel to that one. You might want to.
I'm going to try. We got more on our bro Matt Riddle after the break. Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. So yes, there was an incident with Matt Riddle and Brock Lesnar on Sunday at the Royal Rumble, and it's been blown out of proportion in some places, but it happened. So now we've got Riddle having an issue with Lesnar, Riddle having an issue with Goldberg, which I don't even know what's going on. Like, I don't know. But anyway, so apparently they were in the back, and Brock just went up to him and said something to the effect of, dude, he may have said bro for all I know. He said, you may as well just quit tagging me on social media because we will never work together ever. And Riddle was just Matt Riddle, and Goldberg went on his Brock went on his merry way, and that was the whole incident. So there you go.
Yeah. So really, I look, Paul Heyman loves Matt Riddle. Why would he not? You know, a lot of people do. Brock Lesnar does not. Brock Lesnar has got seemingly no intentions on ever working with Matt Riddle, much like Bill Goldberg seemingly has no intentions on it. And I do wonder, since where this was reported initially on Sunday night and everything else, where it's like, it's just easy. They don't like each other. They're not going to wrestle. It's very easy to continue to hype up there's issues between the two because the two will never touch. And if this is creative marketing in some ways too, or just to play with people, not that it's even going to lead to anything, but just doing it because you can continue to stoke the fires, because it continues to keep people's names in the mix and keeps people on edge. And it feels like it's one of those real things because there is hints of realness in it. I just wonder if this is just being kind of like projected out more than anything, and this is just kind of being played with, and it's going to be one of those things that periodically will float back into the news. Maybe not with Goldberg's name in Riddle, but most certainly with Brock Lesnar's.
All right, if you want to give us a call here today, the phone number, 1-800-878-PLAY, 1-800-878-7529. Where's all my stuff here? There it is.
I don't know. Where's your stuff?
I got stuff all over here. You know what I'm saying? Gary in Ohio, you're on the air. Now I got it. Gary, what's going on?
Hey, not much. How's it going?
What's happening?
This one, I finally caught Raw Monday, and your show last night, and I agree 100% with what you said about the Orton and Edge angle. I mean, that thing was probably two of the best acting performances I've ever seen by both guys. And, I mean, it was just fabulous. But what I want to know was, did either of you see the post after it went off there, WWE showed what happened after it went off there when Edge was getting stretchered and they were taking him to the ambulance?
I didn't see it. What did they do?
Okay, well, Orton was just, again, amazing. He was just like in another world, just watching Edge being carried. He went outside the ring, just slowly walked around and followed, and he was just talking to himself. You could see him talking to himself, and on his way back, got tons of heat on his way back. But the hilarious thing in a way was when they were going back, when they hit the backstage area, here comes Natalya. Here comes R-Truth. Here comes Hawkins and Ryder, Mysterio.
No.
Now they're concerned.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
They're all back there checking on him.
Okay. Dude, I thought you were going to say that in the middle of carting him back, there was a chase for the 24/7 title.
Oh,
yeah, right.
Really?
No, but they were checking Edge, but yet they couldn't go back. They couldn't go to the ring to help him.
Brian,
that
that's
was
worse.
the best part.
Well, you know
what?
Hold on, I got a theory. Maybe they were all chasing Mojo, and that's why they couldn't get to the ring.
I was going to say, at least there's an excuse that way. I was going to say, because it's much worse that they weren't doing anything. They were just sitting there. They suffered from the same wrestler paralysis that guys and ladies will have in the ring when music hits. They can't escape anywhere. They had the same thing. They were so in shock that Randy Orton was beating up Edge that, in another era, Edge would come back as a heel, and everybody that was in that shot that was just sitting back there slack-jawed watching him get loaded up into the ambulance would be the first people whose ass he kicks for not going out there and helping him and getting, Randy Orton off of him. No referees, no nothing.
Well, there you go. Man, oh man, can you imagine? Listen, all I ask, and it's not going to happen, so I shouldn't even bother asking, but...
What, play it on Friday or Monday?
All I ask is that if you're going to have something like that, just come up with some explanation for why everybody is unavailable.
Exactly.
But you know what the problem with this is? I'm going to actually tell you why you can't do this, okay?
Well, I will say this. They're big enough stars, and it is what it is, where you don't have to, but you should do this, and you should.
No, I'm going to tell you why you can't, Mike. I'm actually tell you why you actually can't, okay? Because back in the 80s, okay, it was a very, very different wrestling world. Because if I was going to watch the 605 show on TBS, I was going to watch 2 hours of geeks being beat up, and maybe something happened somewhere and they show me footage of it. And we build up to a Starrcade or whatever, okay? Rarely you would see something happen and the babyface would be destroyed and they'd have to come up with some explanation for why the heels couldn't get down there. And it worked then because you only saw something like this once every 3 or 4 months on television. Now, a babyface is getting beaten up in 2 segments on every Raw show every single week, 52 weeks a year. So the reality is, if you try to make sense of this, you would have to do this 104 different times every year. The babyface is locked up somewhere. The babyface is chasing Mojo Rawley. I mean, in theory, it sounds great, but it happens so often that it would be preposterous overkill to find some explanation for why the babyfaces aren't there every single solitary time. It's probably easier to just hope that nobody thinks about it.
Well, exactly. And when you have stars that big, and obviously there were good circumstances that went around this, but basically what you're saying is there's no difference between Edge and Humberto Carrillo getting stretchered out after Andrade dropped him on his head. That's what you're saying, unfortunately, because of that. You could have done something. You have a legend. I understand what you mean that it happens every single week. I do understand that, but you have a case here where you have people being filmed talking about their reverence for Edge. You have guys online talking about how great it is. Obviously, this is something that is transcending because of how you're portraying it and because of how people are really taking it in. Have a lot of the geeks go run off after Mojo Rawley. Have Kevin Owens go, I got to check on Joe. I got to get out of here. Have small things. You could have done those things on the fly. They've done far bigger things on the fly when it comes to an Owens-Joe thing after Joe got hurt. Use that. Figure out a way to get these people out of there or at least tied up enough that nobody runs out. why there were no referees that ran out and were scared off and just stood there, shot anything, much less the wrestlers. I understand what you're saying, and this is a situation that we're kind of like beating a dead horse because it didn't have to happen with them, but to not think about that is wrong, period. To not try to dot those I's or cross those T's, I'm sorry, is wrong. And I know in the WWE universe, I guess that's okay, but that doesn't that just flat out, it doesn't make it right.
This person says, it's amazing how times have changed that Riddle could be punished for his behavior, yet once upon a time, Shawn Michaels seemingly got away with murder. Dude, it has nothing to do with times changing. It has to do with Shawn Michaels was the number one star in the company, the champion, and Matt Riddle's a dude in developmental. That's
in 1996.
It's not even the time.
It
it's
is,
like
though, but
if Matt Riddle were like the top star in WWE, like if he were your Roman Reigns or your John Cena, then yeah, he'd get away with tons. But he's not. He's a dude in developmental right now. So
yeah, and
that's
a
it.
Different landscape though too. People they go back to that too much of like, well, look what Shawn Michaels did. It's not 1996 WWF land. I mean, it's like it's 30 years later. Sometimes things are not equal just because you want to try to draw the comparison or there's some similarities between the two. It's not the same thing. It's crazy.
This person says, I agree with the Tegan take. That was one thing Raw did better. They had Humberto come back right at Andrade. Tegan being in that battle royal was totally taking her eye off the ball. It wasn't even taking the eye off the ball. It was just, she got beat up in November, if I recall correctly. And it's now the end of January. And after being gone for 2 months or whatever it was, like that's her big return from being killed by Dakota and having Dakota turn on the team and cost them the win at War Games or whatever. That was her return, a random battle royal with like 20 other women. It's ridiculous.
About the costing the team the win, just beating her to death with the cage. You figure you would have come back with something a little stronger there. And again, there's just a missed opportunity in the Rumble to try to tie two things together there too. Although I know it's obviously wasn't their priority, but yeah, they seem to have slipped on both of that. But again, it's probably time to move everybody forward.
SMO Joe suffered a concussion during Raw on Monday. Dave Meltzer reporting Joe suffered a concussion during his and Kevin Owens' match against Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy for the Raw Tag Team titles. Joe went for a dive during the match, landed on the floor as they went to commercial. When they came back, they showed that he was being escorted to the back. Looked like part of the storyline. And actually, I honest to God think that everything worked out better with him being taken out of the match because there was an out for their team losing this match, and they're big stars right now, and we're often looking for outs. I don't even know what the finish would have been otherwise, but the concussion is being monitored through the usual protocol. Of course, he was out for months with a broken thumb, so one thing after another for this poor guy. But that is the update on SMO Joe. We're going to head to a break in a moment. If you want to give us a call here today, we have phone lines open. 1-800-878-PLAY, 1-800-878-7529. You can send your text messages to 425-780-7566. Bryan at WrestlingObserver.com. At Bryan Alvarez. What's so funny?
Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal almost got into a fight on Radio Row at the Super Bowl.
Back in a moment. Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Once again, if you want to give us a call, the phone number, 1-800-878-PLAY, 1-800-878-7529. Text messages, 425-780-7566. This person here says they shouldn't have put that video online. Made these guys like Ray, Kurt Hawkins, and Zack Ryder look like horrible friends. Well, that's what they do. These babyfaces don't have friends on Raw. I mean, sometimes they do, but... And not even Raw. It's like anywhere in WWE. Nobody in WWE has any friends. It's the most friendless place I've ever seen. Even people that are tag partners aren't even friends half the time. This person says, is the Chris Daniels Nitro story where he hurt his arm true? Yes, it's absolutely true. Because 19 years later, he botched the famous Arabian Salt on Pentagon Jr. in AEW. Well, yeah, but he was going for some sort of springboard on Nitro, and he was trying his Arabian Press on the AEW show. So they were different moves, and quite frankly, two big botches in 19 years is not that bad. I mean, that's Daniels, pretty impressive.
Was he hurt on Nitro by Scott Steiner? Was that one of the times? Did he get hurt by him?
No, he botched something and fell on his head.
God, I can't even remember that.
It was. I just watched it. It was him and Mike Modest, and he tried a springboard, but he slipped on the ropes and fell right on his head, and he lost feeling in his left arm, which took like 6 weeks for him to get the feeling back, but he's had arm and neck problems ever since. And the Scott Steiner thing was he ran in after the match and pretended to break their legs.
Okay, I remember him throwing around. I thought maybe it was Modest and Morgan or something like that, but I thought it was Christopher Daniels, because it was at that, again, we were at that really, obviously, as you're going back to rewatch, that really weird time of WCW where we had Air Paris and AJ Styles, and we had a lot of those Georgia guys, and it was very weird, I guess, what was happening at the time with what it looked like. Was it Fusion Entertainment? Was that the name of the company that looked like they were going to go in? And
yes.
Eric's ideas.
Yes. So the other thing about that, which I mentioned last night, which is just incredible, is they sent out EMTs who were going to go out there and, work on the legs of these two men. Michael Modest and Chris Daniels had their legs snapped in two because this was coming off the pay-per-view where Sid got his legs snapped in two.
Sin.
They send out all these EMTs, and Steiner's just going crazy because he's Scott Steiner. And this one, actually not his fault. And there'd been a lot of things that year that were his fault, but this one wasn't. He grabs one of these EMTs, starts beating the hell out of him, thinking it's a local guy. It's not. Guy files charges and Scott Steiner's arrested. Only in World Championship Wrestling.
Love it. Love it.
All right, Dave. Let's go to the text messages here. This person here says, oh, that was the Chris Daniels one. We're getting Edge heads reuniting again with Edge, right? Or maybe Randy Orton just squashes them every week until Edge returns in 6 weeks. Somehow I do not think they're going to put the Edge heads with Edge for this run. I could be wrong.
No. Do they even acknowledge, I'm serious here, I wonder if they even acknowledge Beth from this point forward until maybe Mania or something like that. I mean, obviously, they'll do a zillion things for the network and 24/7s and all the other backstage stuff that they do. I'm sure, together the story is going to be told and she'll be all over it. But I wonder if they decide, unless she is going to be in the crosshairs of Randy Orton, I wonder if they just subtract her from this equation 100% and you just focus on those two, or if you decide to drag in, oh my God, my man and all that stuff, and her taking a possible bump from Randy Orton or something along those lines as we lead into WrestleMania. It'll be interesting to see how they play this, because there's a lot of options that they have, although you really don't need any. Frankly, you can just basically set those two on a course head-to-head, which they already have, and let them talk, and that would probably be all you need.
All right, so now this fella here is going to argue with me. So now, you know what that means? That means I have to win this argument here.
I've heard that from you.
He's telling me that it was an Arabian Press that he tried that he messed up. I don't believe it.
Have you ever tried one?
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the WWE Network, which, it's absolutely impossible to find anything as usual. I have no watch list on here for some reason. Where is my watch list?
I don't know. Put on Mid-Atlantic.
It's nowhere to be found as usual.
Around 82.
All shows, documentaries, reality, interviews, comedies, 4 horsewomen. What?
Comedies?
Home video. Yeah, there's comedies on here. That's what it says. Comedies. The Edge and Christian Show.
Rom-coms?
Camp WWE. Storytime. Swerved. Holy Foley. Southpaw Regional Wrestling. Legends House is listed under comedy. Primetime Wrestling. Tuesday Night Titans, and WWE Slam City.
But not the Bobby Heenan Show?
Dude, don't even tell me that you're considering primetime wrestling comedy. That was deadly serious.
No Bobby Heenan Show. That's a sin.
All right, well, listen, Bo, I'm going to find out here in a little while. This person says, in regards to Michaels and Riddle, perhaps a more appropriate comparison would be CM Punk prior to his 2011 rise. Well, prior to his 2011 rise, everything he did got heat. And then after his 2011 rise, he did get away with a little bit more. He got away with having a bad attitude a lot more when he was a main eventer than when he was not a main eventer. So yes, that's a better comparison right there.
You usually get that, that's one of the things you get. You get a little more attitude hand waved away when you'd slide up the card.
So I haven't seen it yet, but I've got one text after another about the Marty Scurll Nick Aldis promo on NWA Power last night. So apparently I'm going to have to watch that one. Everybody's saying it's absolutely great. So if you haven't checked out NWA Power yet, I guess that's something to check out. If you have checked it out, let me know more about it, everybody. Just people saying it was great. It was awesome.
Oh, that figures. You got excited about that. Unfortunately, my kid was sick, so we decided, well, I'm not going to watch Dark, and I'm not going to watch NWA. I can let it sit there and fester for a little bit. Watch Hot Rod instead. You ever watch that movie, Brian?
I've not watched that movie.
It's funny.
This person here says, I am firmly in the camp that the Daniels AEW botch was planned. Watch it closely. Well, my friend, I am firmly in the camp that it was a botch. Because I also, listen, when I saw this happen, I waffled back and forth for a long time, okay? Because when he screwed up that Arabian press, I was like, what in the world happened? How did he not make this? I was flabbergasted. And then when he botched it, he just threw the guy back in the ring and they kept doing moves and they went to the finish. So, to me, like if it was planned, why did it not play into the match at all? It didn't play into the match at all. Now, later they turned it into a storyline, but that day in that match, it was just like he did a botch and then they just kept going. That was number one. And number two, also, if you watch it, yes, it makes no sense that he tries to do a move he's done 1,000 times and he just can't do it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But if you watch how that dude landed on that metal ramp, there's no way that he planned to land like that on that metal ramp. That was a brutal landing. There was nothing safe about it, and he could have gotten very hurt. And to risk your health for something that then doesn't even play into the match at all, I would say with 99.9999999% certainty, that was just a botch. And maybe someday he'll do an interview and he can tell you about it, but I would be very surprised if that was a planned spot. This person here says, here's what they're going to do, Brian. I guarantee you it is an unofficial prediction. WWE will turn the currently beloved Edge heel by the end of the year, and he will reunite with the Edgeheads. Just watch. They did the same thing with Daniel Bryan in 2018. He came out of retirement in March, and they turned him by November. I will take that bet, my friend. I don't think that's what they're going to do.
Do we have a dollar value on that bet? I'll take that bet.
All right, Mike's going to offer $5.
I think I got that. I got you. Hold on, let me see what I got here. I'll be right back.
Just make sure you'll still be able to put food on the table afterwards.
Hold on.
Dude, it's in coins.
I got what? Spends. And you got I got quarters too, so I think I got this.
All right, Mike's betting $5 that doesn't happen by the end of the year.
3. Yeah, I got it. I got this. I got
All right.
this.
All right.
Let's go. Put it up. Put up your Lincoln, son. Let's go.
This person says there's just so much wrestling. My wife watched Royal Rumble with me and was exhausted by the idea of a 3-hour Raw the next day. Well, you know, that's another thing that we were talking earlier about the post-pay-per-view bump and how there might not be one anymore. I mean, dude, like, these big show weekends, I mean, there wasn't a takeover, but there was a Worlds Collide, and there was a SmackDown on Friday night. So if you're like a hardcore WWE fan, it's 2 hours of SmackDown, 3 hours of TakeOver or Worlds Collide, 6 hours of the Royal Rumble if you're watching the pre-show, and then another 3 hours of Raw on Monday. That is absolutely exhausting. That is also the famous barrier to entry that I've talked about 1,000 times, why we don't seem to have a lot of new fans. If you look at the decline of Raw from 2016 to today, okay, they've been cut almost in half. All right, they're losing tons and tons and tons of viewers. Do you know what that means?
What does that mean?
That means one of two things, okay? That means they've lost about 2 million viewers in 4 years and made 0 new fans? Or, if you want to be positive about it and say, well, maybe in the last 4 years they've made 1 million new fans, that means they've lost 3 million viewers since the year 2016. So there's no way to spin that as a positive. They're either losing a fantastical amount of viewers because they're making some new fans, or they aren't making any new fans and they're losing a ton of viewers. Either one of these is terrifying. That's a lot of people they've lost. The teen audience in the last 2 years is down 44%. They're losing so many teenagers and they're not gaining any. That's a scary stat.
I know it's a dumbass old man and everything, but this will continue to be my fear for a long time is we're not cultivating enough wrestling fans. And there's a lot of wrestling out there. There's more experiences that you can have than any. There is a product specifically made for you. But I do worry about the overall health because, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, the rising tide lifts all ships thing when it comes to WWE. A strong WWE that's actually functional is really better for the entire industry. Now, AEW making strides. They're going to create new fans who may just become AEW fans. Hopefully they span out and become wrestling fans. But I have a real concern with wrestling fans being cultivated in 20 years from now. The old people that are holding it up now, have they passed on enough to make enough hardcore fans where we can continue to maintain where we're at with the wrestling business? And I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see.
Okay, so somebody here is asking about the death of Kobe Bryant and if that had any effect on the Raw ratings on Monday. And
that and the impeachment. There's a lot of stuff.
Well, I don't think that had any effect on anything because if you look at the top 50. Raw is 1, 2, 3. Love and Hip Hop is 4. Below Deck is 5. Love and Hip Hop is 6. Classics NBA is 7. I mean, there was nothing here that did like
Classics NBA would be the only thing, and I bet you they, again, they're probably
1 million.
A little bit different. Yeah.
All right, back in a moment, everybody. Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. So it looks like the Bellas are pregnant. People Magazine today reported Nikki Bella and Brie Bella both pregnant. Their due dates are a week and a half apart. This will be Brie and Daniel's second child. Nikki revealed at the start of the year that she and Artem Chigvintsev had gotten engaged in France in November. This will be their first child. He was her partner on Dancing with the Stars. She said, my husband and I were trying for 7 or 8 months, but then I felt in my heart it was a sign from God. Like, you guys are good with this one, so we stopped trying. When we were in France meeting Artem's family, I felt a little off. I was irritated and uncomfortable in my body. Just you wait. When we got home, I took a test 2 days before Thanksgiving. I saw the positive sign. I was like, oh, man. Can't say what she really said. So, yeah, this will be, I guess, Season 5 of Total Bellas premiering on E! This spring. That's probably going to be the main event.
You think?
Announcement of the pregnancy. So there you go. Congratulations to both of them. Another child for Daniel Bryan. And a first for Nikki Bella. So there you go. Hey, we got a lot to get into tomorrow on the show. We'll have results of AEW and NXT tonight. Hopefully everybody enjoys the shows. Wednesday night, always the best night for wrestling. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. So check those out. Dave and I will be back later on tonight reviewing those shows. It's going to be very exciting. And lots of stuff up on the front page of WrestlingObserver.com, so check it out. And we are out of time. Thanks to Mike as always. Callers and listeners, everybody in the studio. Talk to you next time. Wrestling Observer Live.